Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience. I'm here tonight with my first impressions of the Wavebourn Edelweiss 3 Power Amp Plus. Try to give you a quick look at this, and this thing weighs about 16 pounds, so it's pretty hard to hang on to. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of holding that up during this video. Definitely can't afford to drop that. So anyway, this was loaned to me for review by Wavebourn Electronics, and it's not really currently available. This is a prototype, and but the planned price on this is probably going to be $1,450 US, but this is a design in progress, and it could change and the price could change. So anyway, but right now the price is kind of aiming at $1,450. This is an all-tube speaker amp plus a headphone amp. That's what the plus is for in the name. Plus means plus headphone amp. It is a Class A amp, and it will put out 6 watts per channel into 16 ohms as a speaker amp, and 3 watts per channel, possibly more, into 32 ohms as a headphone amp. The original preamp version of this that I reviewed, what was it, a couple months ago probably, was an OTL type amp, which means output transformer-less. This one does use transformers in the output stage, so it's a little bit different. That one was basically a preamp with 4 sets of inputs, and this is just meant to be either a speaker or headphone amp with 1 set of inputs. Probably, I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to try hooking the two together and use the preamp output of that into the input of this, and then I can hook up multiple. I have 4 inputs then that I can use. Anyway, this design, and this is the latest. Originally I had been shipped the version before this, which had 2 headphone outputs, and one was intended for easier to drive dynamic headphones, and the other was designed for harder to drive planar headphones. Well, I sent that back, and I was sent this just about a week ago, and this is the absolute latest version, but they are working on the next one, which I think they're going to a larger chassis because things just got too crowded on this. So anyway, the difference between this one and the last version, not the one I reviewed, but the one I had before this but traded out, instead of having 2 headphone jacks, it only has 1 headphone jack, and then it uses an attenuator to lower the output so you can use higher sensitivity headphones from the same jack. So basically, if it's turned up all the way, it's equal to the former high output jack, and if it's turned down, then it's more similar to the output for the planar headphones. But what's nice about this is you have every step in between. You can put it anywhere you want, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Anyway, this is recommended for headphones of anywhere from 8 ohms and up. I was told it should work just fine with 600 ohm headphones and maybe even higher. It's intended for both dynamic and planar headphones. And the size of this unit is 13 inches wide by 8.5 inches deep. That includes the knobs on the front and the connections on the back. And it is about 6.5 inches tall with the tubes. And it, like I mentioned a minute ago, this thing weighs in at 16 pounds. It is very heavy and very substantially built. So I'm going to try to give you a closer look at this. And like I said, with the weight of this, it's not real easy, so I'll try to hold it up here for you. You have your power button here, you have your headphone jack, and then this over here would be your volume knob. And then this is your attenuator, which you adjust according to the sensitivity of your headphones. And I've never seen that on any other amp, and it's a very interesting feature that I really do like. because you can adjust this if you are using a real sensitive headphone. And I tried the Grotto SR80E, which is pretty sensitive, and I set the knob at about 9 o'clock. And that's towards the low end. You know, the lowest end would be like at 7 o'clock, and then all the way up would be around, you know, it's like a volume knob. It'd be like at about 5 o'clock would be all the way up. So for the Grotto SR80, I set it at about 9 o'clock, and then for easy to drive planar headphones, like say the Kennerton planar headphones or the new Hi-Fi Man Aria, about straight up seems to work real well. Either about 12 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock, somewhere in there for the easier to drive planar headphones. And then I did try my hardest to drive planar headphone, which is the Hi-Fi Man HE560, which needs about twice the power of the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, and actually quite a bit more power than the original Hi-Fi Man Aria, which is known as being pretty hard to drive. So anyway, the HE560 is real hard to drive. I mean, not up in HE6 territory, but hard to drive. And with this attenuator set anywhere from about 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, this seems to have plenty of power to drive the HE560, which the preamp edition of this that I reviewed a couple months ago, it's not that one is not recommended for planar headphones. It's recommended for dynamic, but it did work out real well with some of the easier to drive planar headphones, like the Kennerton Thror, the Kennerton Woden, and but it wasn't ideal for the harder to drive, like the Sundara and the HE560, where this one it has plenty of power for the 560. I can't tell you if it has enough power for the HE6, but it does have plenty of power for the HE560, which is going to cover 95% of all headphones. Excuse me. So anyway, I'll try to give you a look at the back of this. Oh, I'll let you look at the top first. This is a 4-tube design, and it uses 3 transformers. And on the back here, you've got your one set of inputs, and then you've got your speaker outputs. And these are labeled, well, actually they're not labeled now, but you've got your negative or your ground, and then you've got 2 sets of positive outputs, which would be for either 8 ohm one set or for 16 ohm headphones on the other set. And then here, try to show you this again, you've got a damping control. And what this does is this adjusts the output impedance of the speaker amp outputs only, not the headphone amp, but the speaker outputs, and it adjusts the impedance from a negative 3.8 ohms up to a positive 4.0 ohms, or anywhere in between. So you can match that up to your speakers, whatever sounds best. And then down here you have your standard, I couldn't think of it in my last video, and now I can't think of it again. Your standard power supply here, your 120 volt input, and then you've got a ground connection there if you need it for something. So anyway, let me set this down again, and I want to talk about the sound a little bit. I've only had this for a week, and I have had a chance to actually listen to it for several hours, which is a lot more than normal for something I've had in for a week. But the truth is, I've really enjoyed it, so I keep listening to it. And I just got the Kennerton Ragnar, their Kennerton's flagship closed-back headphone in, I don't know, 3-4 days ago. And pretty impressed with the combination of those two. Anyway, so getting into the sound, I guess the first words I would use to describe the sound of this amp is warm, rich, lush, and liquid are the words I came up with. That it just, You know, it is not a dry, it is not a, it doesn't sound thin, and it never sounds analytical. Just a warm, rich, lush sound. It has excellent extension at both ends of the frequency response, no roll off in the bass or treble that I can hear. Outstanding detail and resolution. Even though it has that warm sound, it doesn't give up anything as far as detail. It sounds very dynamic to me, and it has very tight and punchy bass. Very solid bass to it, which is kind of unusual for tube amps. Some tube amps just don't have that punch in the bass like most solid state amps do, but this one does. The sound, it has a lot of weight and body to it. Like I said, never thin or analytical sounding. I think one of the most impressive things about the sound of this amp is it just has a very three-dimensional, very layered sound to the soundstage. I just hear things in multiple layers. I mean, I was listening the other night, and both in front of me and to the sides, I could very distinctly hear at least 3 different layers to the different sounds and instruments. And it's probably as good or better than any amp that I've heard up to this date, you know, in that respect. What's nice about this, as I told you earlier, it has that attenuator, and with that I can use that with just about any headphone. I haven't tried it with IEMs, but I mean, I don't really think an amp like this was ever intended for IEMs, but it might work. I mean, I've tried some pretty sensitive headphones like the Grottos and the LSA HP2, but I haven't tried anything super sensitive like a IEM or like my Sony that I use for testing background noise of a headphone. But what I have found out with this attenuator, okay, if you say I put in a, you know, sensitive headphone like the Grotto or the LSA, if I turn the attenuator all the way open, I'm going to hear a little bit of background hiss, and then I'm going to have very little volume control. I mean, as soon as I crack it open, it's going to be louder than I want it. So I turn it back, you know, to like say 9 o'clock. But, you know, with a harder to drive headphone like the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, the Hi-Fi Man HE560, I can open the thing up, turn it up to like 3 o'clock or all the way up to 5 o'clock. And with a headphone like that, I don't hear any background hiss at all, but yet it's got the power. So basically what I've done with this is any headphone that I've plugged in, I start at about, you know, 12 o'clock. Unless I know it's real sensitive, then I'll start at the low end. But then I just kind of adjust it to where I don't hear any background hiss at all. You know, if I pause my source, and then I, you know, just back it up, turn it up until I hear a little bit of hiss, just a little tiny bit, and then I back it off until I hear no more hiss, and that seems to be the ideal place to put it. And then usually my volume on the volume knob is going to be somewhere between like 9 and 12 o'clock at a normal listening level, you know, and that's where I want to have it. I don't want to have it around at 3 o'clock, and I don't want to have it at 7 o'clock where I barely crack it, then I don't have any adjustment controls. So anyway, really liking that part of this amp. That's a great feature that I've never seen anywhere else. So I haven't tried this as a speaker amp yet. But I plan to before my full review. The only problem is the only pair of speakers I have right now are the LSA, what are they called? The 10 Signature, and that's a 6.5 inch two-way bookshelf speaker. And they are not very efficient. They, I think, are only about 84 decibels at 1 watt. So I know this will work with them, but with 6 watts of output, probably not going to play them real loud, but I'll give it a try anyway and see how it sounds. You know, it's not going to play loud, I know that, but it's probably going to sound good, so I will give that a try. As far as any negatives or positives, my feelings about this, the only negatives I can point out are it does put off some heat. So you got to give it a little bit of breathing room. You know, you want to probably have at least a foot above it between this and, you know, your next shelf or whatever, and you want some room around it and a place for some air to get to it. But that's typical with any tube amp. It's going to put off some heat. And the only issue I have is it only has one input. Going through the preamp, I could work that out, but you know, if someone doesn't have a preamp, another output or input or two would be nice. The fact that this is single-ended isn't an issue to me, especially since it's a tube amp. My understanding is the point of going to a balanced amp is to increase the voltage and therefore increase the power output, but with a tube amp that's not an issue. They have high voltage anyway. So it is single-ended. I'm fine with that. But like I said, another input or two and a switch to go between them might be nice. Other than that, I'm absolutely loving this amp. In my positive section, I wrote in my notes, possibly the best sounding headphone amp I have ever heard up to this day. So this is going to be a contender for my headphone amp of the year. I've got my probably the first week of January, I'm going to come out with my best of list, and this is definitely going to be a contender for not only tube amp of the year, but just headphone amp in general. It is that good. So I don't want to spoil it completely before my full review. I'm going to try to get that out in a few weeks, but the year-end video will probably come out before that, but I will go ahead and do a full review of this, put some more time on it, and dig in a little bit deeper to the sound, try to describe it a little bit better. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this video up. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you're all welcome to join us at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We're up to over 14.5 thousand members. Like to see you over there. And once again, thanks for watching my video.